Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 9 to 5 Faith. I am here with my new friend, John Liddle. How are you today, John?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me on, Paige.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And John, I just love it because I know you do radio broadcasts. And so I like to close my eyes and just like hear people. And I'm like, yeah, you have a radio voice.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. You're not really born with a radio voice. Like almost nobody is. You
Oh,
just
okay.
kind
I
of
didn't know
develop it over
that.
time.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
you just develop it over time. Almost nobody. There are
Yeah.
some people that can just roll out of bed and sound wonderful, but just over time you develop the ability to put the vocal cords together in the right way.
Now, is
I
it
don't
like
know.
voice acting where like you can change it, or like does it just kind of become how you
No,
talk?
I think it just evolves into kind of how you talk, or,
Okay.
I've got kind of a broadcasty voice sometimes. Like, all right, when I'm on KRLD, it's a little bit more like this. So,
Yeah.
and then when I'm doing sports broadcast, it can get a little bit more shouty because here's the deal for tonight's game. The SMU Mustangs really want to come out there and they want to play great tonight. And so there's just it's a little bit more active. And then if you're voice acting, then you can do anything you want to do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense. I think like I'm a little bit of a writer. And so it's like writing for your audience. And so yours is speaking for your audience, but it's
Yes,
like
exactly.
you're not just speaking. It's not the words you're saying, it's how you're saying it. So
So today I will try to speak like I normally speak to somebody. So
fair enough.
I'll be normal John today.
Fair enough. And I think the fact that I said you have a voice for radio is a much better compliment than the alternative, which is you have a face for radio, which is just like the biggest insult in the world. So
Well, I don't know if it's the biggest insult in the world. I
I
mean,
think so.
especially around when you've been in radio for as long as I have, you hear it, I don't know, twice a week. So it's
Yeah.
totally cool. It's totally cool. I can
I
come
do
up with better insults,
I
but that's
do
not what we're
get
here for.
it's not what we're here for, but I do have those moments when I'm listening to the radio and then like the evolution of social media when then like you can go look at people's faces, you're like,
Hmm.
oh, that's not what I was thinking at all. Or when
Yeah.
you're reading a book and then they make it into a movie and you're like, oh, that's not how I pictured the characters at all.
Yeah, I'm sure I really disappoint people in that way a lot.
Yes.
But, that's okay. That's okay though. It is I am what I am, as
Yep.
Popeye said. So,
Yep. That works. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and the
mm.
radio and the broadcasting and all that fun stuff.
Well,
Because it sounds fun.
if we're here to talk about our 9 to 5, my 9 to 5 is more like a 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And so
There you go.
I work at this news radio station, and it's not news talk. We don't do a bunch of opinion talk. It is news radio. So it's news and it's traffic and it's weather. And I'm an anchor on that station, 1080 KRLD in Dallas. And then in addition to that, I really my first love is sports and sports broadcasting. And so I do a lot, just as much as I can possibly get my hands on or my voice on. That could be radio,
Yeah.
doing play-by-play for football or basketball or whatever, or it could be on the TV, which is turned into the streaming side of things like on ESPN Plus and stuff like that. So I do a lot of
Yeah.
that in this area. And then it just kind of depends on what time of year it is. I do some other things on the side as well, like I'm the public address voice of the Dallas Wings during the summer.
Okay.
I've got my podcast Where You're Going,
Gotcha.
which is a total passion project of mine that I'm
Yeah.
really enjoying putting my whole heart into. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I do things right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I feel like too, I have so many questions about the the skill of sports announcing, because I can hardly keep my eye on the ball or the puck or whatever game it is, let alone tell you what is happening in real time.
Right. Well, it is, we do have cheat sheets, and I honestly, I just happen to have one sitting here. Um, I didn't prepare this for you like I should have, but this is a spotting board. So this is
What?
actually for a football game that I
That's
did
so cool.
a few weeks back. But as you can see
Yeah.
there, and I'm going to get myself away from my microphone. So I don't know exactly how to do this, but you can kind of see out of the corner here. You
Yeah.
got the quarterback up there, you got receivers, you got running backs, and
Okay.
down
Okay.
here on the bottom, you got the defense
Gotcha.
and stuff. And so you've got all the
Cool.
stats and all the places they're from and how to phonetically
That's
say their
cool.
names and all those sort of things. And that really helps me keep things in line
Yeah.
and keep me in line when I'm doing a ball game. And thankfully, when I do basketball, I don't have to keep up with nearly as many names as
Yeah.
I do when we're
With
talking about football season.
Yeah, for sure. Man, that I feel like I saw the genie behind the curtain is like I get to learn all the things and that really cool sneak peek. I had no idea. That's really awesome. I remember when I was in high school, one of our teachers was actually did part-time voice work for the LA Dodgers.
Oh,
And
nice.
so like I'm not going to do like any kind of impression, but like sometimes he would do the morning announcements in his announcing voice.
Yeah.
And so it was always really fun cuz you would hear him like, "Good morning, Glendora." And I was like, "Oh, this is a fun thing to do." So I always remember, having that kind of connection to the LA Dodgers, weirdly enough. But
Well, it's very cool.
yeah.
It was a good impression, though. That
Yeah.
is one thing I noticed about you in listening to your show. You got a great voice,
Oh,
got
thank
a
you.
fantastic voice. Keep going. You've got
Thank
that
you.
part of it down.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I like to it's evolved over time in terms of the level of comfort I have
Sure.
in talking to other people. My coworker forced me into being on camera and talking on like audio and everything when we worked for a company, and we started doing like live shows and stuff like that, and she forced me to be on camera and it was so uncomfortable. And then I realized I'm like, oh, I kind of love doing this. And then you just get comfortable and you just like, it's just talking. It helps a lot when it's like not in front of a live audience. I feel like that is like a whole other bundle of nerves.
It isn't another bundle of nerves, but it's another level of excitement too.
Yeah.
Like there's really nothing like talking to people when they're live and they can see you and stuff. And sometimes I don't even know what I say just because it makes me so excited. So I do
Yeah.
have to, you should take this show on the road sometime
That would be
and just see
fun.
how fired up you get and just what
Yeah.
kind of crazy
Oh
things you say.
gosh. And I'm Italian, so I'm like very like active with my hands and my body movements. It just happens. Now I have like a way out there question. Feel free
Uh-huh.
to pass.
Uh-huh.
But what is your biggest like snafu when you've ever like done broadcasting or like with sports, like the biggest thing that you've accidentally said, if you
Okay.
have one?
My biggest public failure, if you will, didn't really come in broadcasting. It came in singing, actually. I sing a lot of
Okay.
national anthems and stuff for
Okay.
like professional sporting events here in the
Right.
area. And so Rangers game, baseball game 4 years ago, and I did the national anthem and then I did God Bless America for this
Okay.
game against the Twins. And everything went great for the national anthem, went outstanding. And it was back before all the pitching rules changed and stuff. And it was a really hot night. We didn't have an indoor stadium. Everything was
Okay.
outdoors. So it was 100-degree day. It was just ridiculously hot. And
Yeah.
so 3 hours later, I dragged myself out there for God Bless America. And there's a lot more to it. But basically, the bottom line is I started on the wrong note. I started a little too high, and everything was sounding really pretty good all the
Okay.
way up until that final note where I went up there and I tried to hit it and I had no steam left and it came out so warbly and awful,
Oh
and
my
and
goodness.
I'm not exaggerating when I say it did. I mean, for me, go viral. I'm talking about 500,000 views on Twitter and
Right.
all this
Right.
sort of thing. Just
Oh
I mean, because
no.
it was a very public failure.
Oh, that's
But
awful.
yeah, and that was in front of like 30,000 people plus
Yeah.
whoever was watching on TV.
Yeah.
So if I mess up now, even on the radio, say something silly or,
Yeah.
get something mixed up, or I say something's a touchdown when it's really not,
Yeah.
I can really think back and be like, you know what? I've been through a lot worse than this. It is going to be okay.
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm very sorry that happened to you, but I
Oh, it's
think
okay.
part of it is like owning, not our mistakes, but just like owning our humanity and like humility with it. I was listening to a speaker the other day and she says, we can either get humble or we can get humiliated. And I was like,
Yes.
yes, that.
Absolutely. And I laughed as soon as it happened. And, a lot of my friends came to my defense when that happened. And, obviously if you don't know me, then it was a very laughable moment. It was very
Yeah.
funny. But, my ability to laugh at the moment, not to put myself down, but just to laugh at the
Right.
moment and say, you know what? Sometimes we screw up, and then to get back out there and do it again is really, really big. And I've had a
Yeah.
chance to do it on more stages and sing in front of former President Bush and stuff like that
Yeah.
since the bad moment happened. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's
That's
all
always
worked
fun.
out. Just yeah. If
I'm gonna
you it,
knock on wood because like I don't think that moment has happened yet for me, but like I'm always terrified because like sometimes this has no filter. And so like the first time I ever did like live shows and stuff, I'm like I'm going to cuss. Like I'm going to let something slip and it's not going to be good. Thank goodness it hasn't happened yet. Or when it has, it's like been intentional and not like accidental, and it's not been terrible. So like fingers crossed that like that can still hold off a little bit. But yeah,
I
that's my
believe in you.
biggest fear.
Gonna be all right.
So tell me a little bit about like the intersection of like your career and your faith. And I always like
Mm.
to kind of reel it back of like, did your career start and then you came to faith, or have you
Mm.
always been a Christian? Like take us through a little bit of that journey and what that
Well,
looked like.
I appreciate you asking that. Definitely, I came to faith when I was a kid,
Okay.
but I do look at my life and I'm like, while I have always been a Christian, like since I was 7 years old,
Yeah.
certainly the way was actually submitted and surrendered, and you know, um,
Yeah. Practicing
you
it.
know, well, I mean, just yeah, like truly practicing it,
Right.
and you
Right.
can even be in church and not practicing it. You can be
Right.
outwardly saying one thing and then really not doing it, right? I mean, that's evolved over time. And so I will say this: as long as I've been in the workforce, I've been a Christian. I've
Okay.
been, I don't want to say outspoken about that. I've been proud of that. I've been
Okay.
very, very secure in that.
Yeah.
But I really do think over the last few years that God has shown me, again, we talk about being humbled, just a new level of humility, even when it comes to my faith and like what it
Yeah.
means to be a Christian in the workplace. I think of myself, 20 years ago, and we were all idiots when we were 18,
Right.
or or whatever
Yeah.
age that was. But I think of being a server at a restaurant, and hanging out with all the kids. They were all doing whatever, the drinking, cussing, smoking, drugs, all that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
I was, instead of like meeting them where they were, I was the
Right.
person that was like calling them out for it, or just had my nose in the air, like, I can't believe you guys do that stuff. I don't do that stuff,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I just didn't know how to humbly walk into a space and just, hey, let's let the light of Jesus shine through, do a lot of preaching, and if necessary, open up your mouth,
Right.
and that it's not my job to convict them of their sin. It's my
Right.
job to be, a friend to them and to love them. And maybe if there's something that's going on in their life that they want to talk about, I can be a friend to them. And I
Yeah.
wasn't that, because I just didn't know. I think I grew up in the Baptist church in the 90s, and so there was a lot of us versus the world type of stuff
Right.
going on. And I just didn't know how to handle that. So, I wasn't doing anything on purpose. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody's feelings on purpose, but I'm sure I did. And I'm
Right.
sure I alienated myself and gave Christians a bad name for, just the type of Christian that I was. I thought I
Yeah.
was being a good person, but I
Right.
wasn't a good friend. I wasn't
Yeah.
a good, a safe person to talk to,
Right.
as we
Yeah.
say. And I'm not going to pat myself on the back, but that has changed over the years.
Right.
It's more of, hey, be their friend, be anybody's friend first. That's really all I'm here to be. And, obviously do the right things in the workplace, just like you
Right.
do the right things in life. But you, um, but it's not about, uh, you know, uh, assembling a Bible study at work or something like that in order to prove that you are a good Christian, or
Right.
something like that, or separating yourself as if to say, no, I'm above you guys. That's not what we're called to do, I don't
Right.
think. And
Yeah.
and so that's how it's changed for me over the years. So
Hmm.
I've always been a person of faith, but I've been a less mature person of faith than I am today, when it comes to how I interact with people in the
Yeah.
workplace in a faith manner.
Yeah. That's fair enough. I think looking back, I'm even writing some articles right now for a series in like September, October. And I'm like writing these and I'm like, if like I'm hypocritical against all this stuff. Like
Mhm.
if you go back and like look at my social or look at my old blogs, you'll find myself contradicting myself. But I'm basing this in what I believe in scripture. And there's always that evolution of, where we have been and where we're at now.
Absolutely.
And I actually follow this one gal on social, and her handle is I used to be a psychic, and she's a Christian, and she like came from like new age psychic kind of mentality, and spirituality, and like came over to Jesus and the good side. And um, she has this whole thing of like why she keeps up her old posts. And she's like, I
Mm,
want people to see the evidence of Jesus in my life. And
that's
that
good.
transformation is the proof of Jesus. And I was like, yeah, I like that.
And I'm caught in this, thing between sometimes, and there's not a lot out there. I don't think you could find on me on social media that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. But, you know, when it is appropriate, just to help other people know they're not alone, be like, listen,
Right.
I used to do this, or I used to think this, or I was
Right.
not right in this way. And having
Yeah.
the humility to say that, and talk about, that transformation, that journey that really can help encourage somebody who is maybe a little bit closer to where I
Yeah.
was in whatever area of
Yeah.
life. So I think that, um, I really commend that person for doing that. I think
Yeah.
that's honest and that's real of her for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it can be used in a testimony, no doubt.
Yeah. And I think the problem like some Christians can find themselves in is like feeling, or other people who are not Christians seeing Christians and feeling like that they can't relate, and like, oh,
Mm,
you don't know what I've been through, you don't know what it's like, blah blah blah.
right.
And really it's, a conversation of like, no, I've been in your shoes, I know what it's like. There's this really great book, it's called Gay Girl Good God,
Hmm.
and it's by I think it's Jackie or Jacqueline Hill Perry, I think is her name. And I love that book because it's taking a topic where people are just like, you don't understand. And
Mm.
she's like, no, like I understand. I've been there. I've walked that road. And I think that's just what sharing our testimony is all about. So
Oh, absolutely.
there's
And
that
some
little
people
aside.
walk that road, and, they're doing it, publicly.
Right.
They're not, they don't believe in God. And so or they
Yeah.
don't believe that God's for them. And so they do whatever they want to do.
Right.
Or there are people like me who have been Christians, have known about God, known what I wanted to do, but I wasn't doing it. And I kind of was, living a lie in areas of my life that, but that's the most powerful part of my story now, is where he's taken me from death in that area,
Yeah.
to life, and not perfection, but
Right.
just life and freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you work in the media space, which I work in the tech space. So I feel like the stereotypical culture that we might associate with media and with tech is really, really prevalent in that it's very secular and kind of that it's difficult to be a Christian. At least that's the stereotype. Have you found yourself in any situations like that, working in the media or anything along those lines?
Difficult to be a Christian, and I was thinking about this. I don't find it difficult to be a Christian in my space. It's just like, how do I walk out my faith, and I do it unapologetically, while at the same time not trying to hit people over the head with the Bible. So,
Right.
there is a little bit of a line to walk there. And so I say it's not hard, but then I talk about how I've got to toe a line.
Right.
Here's how I do it. And I want to credit, my boss right now, and really my bosses, that really they've given me kind of editorial control. I don't
Mm,
remember ever a time where I've had to dial back something I've said, or
okay.
retract, or like, well, you really need to talk about this, topic because everybody's talking about it.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
really doesn't happen in my particular space.
That's
And I don't,
awesome.
um, and
That's
so
lucky.
now that isn't to say that I don't talk about issues, or I
Right.
don't interview people about issues that they feel are important, that I don't necessarily personally, if you got right down to it, agree with.
Right.
But as a member of the media, which, I just pause every time I say that because it gets such a negative connotation, right?
Right.
But as a
Right.
member of the media, here's all. I'll use this word instead: journalist.
Okay.
As a journalist,
Yes.
I need to ask questions and tell stories from all sides.
Right.
And that is important to me. Like, really important to me. And I'm not a perfectionist in that way, but if I tell a story from one side, I need to be open to telling it from another. And I know that's uh I think that's hard for everybody. Like, it doesn't matter what you believe. That is
Right.
hard, not to bring your personal beliefs into it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do let people into it a little bit on the radio, whether it be like my my belief in God or something like that. But when we get down to those really controversial topics,
Yeah.
abortion, guns, things like that, I don't think religion belongs in those areas, in those spaces. I don't think my belief system from a religious perspective,
Yeah.
from a relationship with God perspective, like, it really doesn't, like, factor in.
Right.
For me personally, I know other people believe differently.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and so when I'm doing stories like that, I can tell both sides because I really do believe in unity. I believe in bringing everybody together, and that we have a lot more in common than we do,
Yeah.
um, you know, not in common. Um,
Mhm.
eh, if people want to blame the media for putting people on sides, I don't know.
Yeah.
I I don't know, whatever, blame the media. People feel like they need somebody to blame. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I need somebody to blame because I don't wanna
Yeah.
blame the media, so I wanna blame politicians. Politicians
Right.
blame the media. Politicians blame, the right
Yeah.
blames the left, and the left blames the right. We've gotta stop blaming each other, man. We've
Yeah.
gotta stop blaming each other. I so you believe differently than me. All right,
Okay.
no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move on, and let's think about some things that we can agree on.
Yeah.
Let's think about some things that are basic to humanity, not
Right.
basic to what the right wants or what the
Yeah.
left wants.
Yeah.
I know this has been a rambly answer,
No,
but
not at all.
it's not easy. It's not easy to answer. So
Yeah.
anyway, all that to say, I am not censured as a member of the media. I'm not told what to say. I am not slapped on the wrist for saying something that's more right leaning. Because I'm not. I'm not
Right.
at all.
That's
And
good.
I hate it if people are in that
Yeah.
situation, but that is not my experience. My experience is I want to connect with people. I want to unify people. We do want to entertain people a little bit, and we want to inform people.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing that, then I'm doing my job correctly. And then on top of that, just for me personally, I want to do it as a person that carries hope, and it
Yeah.
carries positivity and carries the light of Jesus as well.
Yeah.
So I'll stop talking on that answer, and I'll let you
It's
dive into
okay.
anything specifically that interested you in what I had to say.
I mean, it
But
was all really interesting to me. I think the one thing I just talked with someone else on the podcast about this, but what I tend to go for is looking at, when you're in political conversations or like top of the headline conversations, I think for the vast majority of issues, quote unquote issues in the American life, we all agree on the outcome. For the majority of things, we all agree on the outcome. How we accomplish that outcome is what is debated and what is fought over. So, for example, guns, right? We all want less people to die.
mm-hmm.
Like ultimately, people who are for pro gun or whatever, they want to not die, and people who are trying to restrict guns, they want mass shootings not to happen. At the end of the day, everyone wants people to not to die, so like we agree on that. And I think once like people are able to like be like, okay, we agree on the finish line. Like the disagreement is not on the finish line. The disagreement is how we get there. I think that we're able to touch on each other's humanity a little bit more.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I certainly agree with that. And it doesn't help. And, I don't want to make it sound like I'm against people on the left or on the right, because I'm really like not.
Yeah.
Again,
No,
I
I
want to
get you.
unify everybody. But
Right.
when something happens, and then the first thing the people on the left do is, I don't want your thoughts and prayers, because they're attacking religion.
Yeah.
They're attacking, the fact that obviously the right doesn't want to give up their guns.
Right.
And then and then they like absolutely blame it on people that want to hold on to their guns. Like when that is the opposite of unifying.
Right.
And I don't know how it helps anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know how it truly helps the victims to point a
Yeah.
finger at like truly innocent people,
Right.
and I can't believe I'm saying this, because I really, honestly, I really am like super down the middle on
Yeah.
almost everything.
Yeah.
And so I'm not trying to attack people on the left
No.
at all in
Yep.
saying that. I think that's just an example,
Right.
because
Yeah.
there are right-leaning people who do that as well.
Yeah.
When something goes bad in the economy, like we've seen over the last few years, they point the finger, like you said, the end is we all want a good economy, right?
Right.
And so whoever happens to be in power, if the economy goes bad, then the
Right.
opposite party is going to point a finger at
Right.
the current administration.
Right.
That's exactly what we've seen,
Yeah. And
with
I mean, like
these little stickers on the gas pumps that, of President Biden saying, I did that. I mean,
yeah.
this is it's all disgusting. It's all, pointing fingers and blame in order to elevate your position. And it's the part of covering the news and covering politics that really, like, sometimes physically hurts me, like,
Yeah.
because I am a unifier. I'm the guy that wants everybody to get along.
Right.
I'm an encourager, and I am I'm really, really tired of seeing people
Yeah.
point across the aisle and shout at each other.
Yeah, for sure. Like I mean, you're in Texas, right?
Yeah.
And so like we're border states right here, right? Like you look
Mhm.
at immigration and illegal border crossings, and like at the end of the day, again, both sides just want those people to be safe and have, to be healthy and not to be taken advantage of, right? Like, but where that happens and how that happens looks very different. Do you
Mhm.
feel like that was a really terrible like way to roll into my next question. I'm not gonna ask you a question about immigration. Um, but that was just another
Sure.
example. Okay,
'Cause I ain't got no answers.
segue. Do you feel like you have kind of the freedom? You said you weren't censured, meaning like people are not like, quieting your voice in terms of like what you
Right.
say and how you say it.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you have the right? Obviously you have the legal right, but kind of the right in as a journalist
Mhm.
to not report on things. Like if
Um,
something crosses your
well,
moral boundary, or has just
gosh,
that not happened?
no, no, I a right to not report on something.
Meaning like
Well,
to
I mean,
omit something, being like going to
no.
your, like say a story comes across and you like tell like your boss, like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable reporting on this or
Hmm.
talking about
I'm just
this or
trying to think
something,
of what, if
what that would
something
be.
is newsworthy, and that it kind of brings into question like a whole nother fish to fry, which is what is newsworthy.
Yeah.
You know, something that is newsworthy to Newsmax is not newsworthy to CNN.
Right.
And so and vice versa.
Right.
And so for us as a very down the middle organization, you know, uh we have not been like after Hunter Biden's laptop or whatever for
Right.
the last 5 years. We don't care,
Right.
right? Until actually something happens, with it,
Right.
which which it has a little bit, but it's not something that we're on a witch hunt against
Yeah.
the left. And the same thing for anything on the right side, anything that's on the fringe, we're not going to go after it. We're going to look down the middle. And so it
Yeah.
kind of depends on the news organization. And then you also got to think we only have so much time as well. So I
Right.
know I'm answering your question with that's not the whole question.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. If something is newsworthy and there's no doubt that it's newsworthy, I'm they write the story for me. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
I'm not going to because I mean hopefully we're doing the right thing. The only thing I would omit is if somebody unintentionally wrote the story with bias and there
Right.
are words in there that I shouldn't say. I need to say something more down the middle. I've done that before.
Right.
Like if
Okay.
somebody writes something from the left perspective or the right perspective, I try to look for those buzzwords and take
Yeah.
them out because I
Yeah.
don't want to inflame anybody on either side and I want to look at it down the
Gotcha.
middle.
Okay.
Like what we experience in our jobs is it goes to um there's an opinion on what happened on January 6th, right?
Right.
People CNN uses the word insurrection, CBS
Right.
News uses the word insurrection. You will not find Fox News using the word insurrection or something like that, or
Right.
I maybe they say attack on the Capitol. I don't watch enough Fox
Right.
News. No. But you know, even like phrasing like that, you've got to be very, very careful,
Yeah.
because you don't want to even appear to have bias. And
Yeah.
that is even more important to me because
Mm.
while I work with people where I know their leanings are left or right,
Yeah.
I truly am like somebody that's down the middle.
Yeah.
Like I take some convincing from either side. And so
Yeah.
I truly don't want to inflame anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anybody any reason to tune me out because they think I'm left leaning or right
Yeah.
leaning. And so, another thing like that in the news is, do you use the word illegal immigrant? Do you use the
Right.
word migrant? That is, and
I tried to be, I don't know if you noticed,
see,
but I
and
chose my words. I was like, okay,
yeah,
like let's,
exactly. And so you get the sense of what I'm
yeah, I
saying.
gotcha.
Like words really do matter.
Yeah.
And even if, okay, I think it's factual that, those that people that cross the border illegally are in the country illegally. And so you could say illegal immigrant, but over time, phraseology changes and
Hmm.
all of a sudden you're more in one camp than the other simply by
Yeah.
using a phrase,
Yeah.
simply by using the word insurrection. Um,
Yeah.
it basically
It
makes
reveals
people
it
think that
outs you.
I'm left leaning,
Yeah.
and so you really got to watch that stuff. So that's the only part that I would omit, is
Gotcha.
to make
Okay.
sure if I'm telling a story, if I'm giving a story, that I am, um, you know, doing it in an as unbiased a way as I possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think too, like, I totally know what you're talking about in terms of like choosing your words. I remember when the George Floyd situation was happening and the company that I was working for released a statement. And I remember trying, I was definitely more right than my coworkers. So
Mhm.
like I tried to give the voice of the people who would not against like right or wrong here, but like when we're putting out this statement, let's make sure it is very all encompassing in terms of what we can say about it. And I remember, I mean, I tried to push back. It wasn't, well, it wasn't received, but they had said Black Lives Matter, um and it was all about the capitalization of those letters.
Hmm.
And I
Interesting.
said, if we use Black Lives Matter, it was the whole saying, and it was more in regards to the general idea than the organization. I said, if we take away the capitalization of those words, we're not aligning with the organization, versus where if we were to capitalize those words, it would look like as if we are aligning with the organization. So and it was beyond my pay grade to decide whether or not we're aligning with the organization. But
Right.
I wanted to be that voice of like, hey, from like an outsider's perspective and someone who believes very differently than a lot of the majority of employees here, um, this is how it could be perceived as us aligning with this organization that from my perspective we have not committed to aligning to. And so it's I totally get what you mean. It's just like those little things. Now they still went and capitalized it and then had to deal with that feedback, but I spoke my piece. But you have to do it very strategically.
Yeah, and it is interesting, and I thankfully things like Black Lives Matter. We are not, as a media organization, we don't get behind any organizations.
Right.
We tell the stories, and so that is very very helpful to us that we don't have to
Yeah.
go into that. But even then, you've got to be careful with words, like before. And this just goes back to being factual. you know um Before the police officers were convicted, you
Was it
you
murdered or
couldn't
killed?
you couldn't call it murder. But
Right.
when they were convicted, it absolutely is murder because they have been convicted. And
Right.
no, I don't want to say most people don't get that, but a lot of people online, they just
Yeah.
they just don't understand. They see what happened, and
Yeah.
and they're judging it in their minds. That's a murder, and it ended
Yeah.
up, it was by a jury. Yeah, a jury said yes,
Yeah.
That is murder. And so you had to make sure before the verdict came in,
Yeah.
that Derek Chauvin was accused of murder, not
Right.
that he murdered George Floyd.
Right.
And so there are all
Yeah.
these
So many situations. What was
so many
that?
situations, bear traps that you can get
Yeah.
into. But thankfully for us, I'm so grateful that I have the just just the desire and the what I can fall back on. All right, is I can look into it and see if it's truth or not. Is it factual? That's all I'm trying to go
Right.
after.
Yeah.
Is it factual?
I'll give this account a shout out because I think that they do a really great like way of kind of splitting things down the middle is the Pour Over News. It's kind of a Christian based organization, but it reports the news and always tries to one take a very like factual approach to it, but then also they always conclude it to like how should we as Christians respond to the situation. So
Hmm.
I'll give them a little shout out because I really enjoy reading their content. If you are ever like, I don't know how I should feel about this as a Christian, they kind of help you there. So let's
Very
get,
cool.
yeah, Pour Over News. I think, I don't know if they have a website. I'm a social media person. I follow them on social media. Um, Talk to me a little bit about like a day in the life, a week in the life of John, and like what does your faith and church involvement look like? Are you able to, are you traveling a lot, or are you, pretty homebound, or what does that look like? Are you able to be involved in your church,
Yeah,
etc.?
I'm pretty DFW bound, and I'm very involved in my church, and so that's going to mean every Sunday, and I serve with the kids, and then I go to the actual service, and then I have got a small group of guys that I'm involved with, and we meet every Wednesday night at a taco shop near church, and we have an hour and a half of conversation about what happened in the service that week, as far as
Mm,
what we talked about. Like this last week, we talked about forgiveness, so we're going to dive deep into forgiveness for an hour and a half,
nice.
and kind of get into that. And then in addition to that, I also am a kids leadership experience coach, and so this is um, a deal we do for fourth and fifth graders at my church, where it's like it's kind of like their first serving opportunity, like
Okay.
formal serving opportunity in the church. And so they
Wow.
get opportunities
Start them
to
young. I love
serve.
it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I
I
mean,
love
it's
it.
just like, and we also get to dive a little bit deeper into concepts than we do in a typical kids service on a Sunday. And
Mm-hmm.
so we don't just go into, all right, this week we'll talk about how Jesus has forgiven me. We go a little bit deeper into that. We talk
Mm,
about that. We've got these Wednesday gatherings that we do monthly, and then we get together with this particular group of kids, like this pod of 10 kids. And we go a little bit deeper, and then they've got objectives that they're trying to think about all month. And it could be like, hey, do an extra chore at home if we're talking about service, or,
mm.
meet another kid at school and talk about what they want to talk about. And it's just, it's wonderful. It's going to be my second year involved in it. It's a school time thing. And it's just, you get so much joy from seeing kids light bulbs go on
Yeah.
with these concepts that are hard for us as adults to get sometimes.
Right.
Why should I forgive? What's the meaning of forgiveness? Why,
Yeah.
what's the what's the upside here? And so
Right.
it is just a really joyful time. So those are the main things that I do with my church
Yeah.
in Texas right now.
Yeah. Now, has your schedule, like maybe it has allowed for you to be differently involved, or maybe it's hindered your involvement in your church just because you are working a
Oh,
little bit of
this is
weirder hours?
Well, this is a great conversation, because I mean, I had an opportunity last year to get involved with Kids Leadership Experience, and it would mean giving up several times during the year, money making opportunities for myself, opportunities to do ball games, which the ball games I do, they're freelance basis. And
Right.
so if
Okay.
I don't do that game, then I don't get that $400. But I committed to this thing. I
Mm,
committed to, this is something that God has called me to do during this season, then I'm going to turn that game down. And so it was a great thing that God called me to do because it really like helped my trust in him financially.
mm,
And just being like, God, if if you want me to do this, then you're going to provide for me. I don't have to think that, oh, I can't make it to church because I've got work.
yeah.
No, I can choose to make church. I can choose to make my relationship with God, my service, how I'm working with these kids a priority. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we say that, hey, God's first in my life and then my family and then my work, we we need to follow through with that
Yeah.
with our actions. And if God has called us to something, then we need to say no to work.
Yeah.
And it really gave me an opportunity to do that. And it wasn't an easy decision to make. And
Right.
sometimes I was just like, it was like gritting your teeth and, just bearing it and being like, okay, God, you told me to do this.
Yeah. Like,
I
here,
don't
take it.
necessarily
Take
want to do it,
it.
but, I just either believing that God's going to make up for those finances elsewhere, or that I don't truly need that money, that, it's
Yeah.
I'm gonna get by anyway. And so that was a really like another level. Like God's always taking us to another level. He's always challenging us in somewhere.
Right.
And if you're not feeling challenged right now, then you're probably not growing.
Mm,
And I and so you know we're supposed to thank him for those times when we're
yeah.
challenged. We're supposed to thank him for those lessons that he's teaching us. And so that was definitely the biggest lesson in the last year. So we'll
Yeah.
see what kind of lessons he's got for
Fingers crossed.
me coming up here,
Yeah.
because we never stop growing as Christians. We're either
Yeah.
growing or we're giving up some
Dying.
ground
Yeah.
that God has helped us take. and
Yeah.
and let's keep plowing forward. Let's keep taking ground, because that's the most important thing in our life.
Yeah.
It's not work.
Yeah. My pastor always says, especially like mostly speaking to like obviously Western culture because we live in America. But he says, you know, here in Western culture, we show our affections with our time and our money.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, how are you spending your time and how are you spending your money? And do those things line up with what God is asking you to do?
And even these days, I think you would agree with me that time
Mm,
is even the biggest. People can throw money
yeah.
at stuff because they make it,
Right.
but they they don't have to. Maybe they've got just too much money, and time is the bigger sacrifice,
Yeah.
and time is always something that we're looking for more of.
Yeah.
Um, and so rearranging our time. Hey, he's absolutely right about money too, but
Yeah.
at least um, in my recent few years, the time, putting God first with my time and putting my
Hmm.
family next with my time
Yeah.
is, you know, th- that's the biggest test for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's also why I just like love these conversations on this podcast because we spend 40 hours a week. Roughly, the average person spends 40 hours a week working.
Hmm.
And how are we spending that time and how can we use that time to be God honoring and God centering and not see it as like just something that we do.
Mm. And I think I just love that our church had a chance to, for almost 6 months, we went through a series called Hope Carrier, where we talked about, how we can, carry hope into the world in every single area. And so, yes, that includes church. Okay. How are we, carrying hope in church, and how are we carrying hope in family? But then how are we carrying hope in education? And so that's kids going to school. And how are we carrying
Hmm.
hope in whatever kind of job that we have. And it was so eye-opening, to I think as a church family, to go on this journey together of just trying to figure out how we can be more intentional about that, and not put our job in a box over here, and church in a box over here, and family in a box over here. No,
Yeah.
it's all supposed to be God honoring, and it's
Yeah.
all like part of this life that we're living,
Mm-hmm.
that is first and foremost to honor God and
Yeah.
to love others. And and so for me, it was something I felt like I was already kind of passionate about, but
Yeah.
it definitely helped me know that whatever I do, I can do it with a spirit of carrying hope. And that could be
Yeah.
in answering an email. That could be in just saying hi to, the security worker that's downstairs that's about to fall asleep because she's been there overnight, and it's
Yeah.
6 a.m. when I get to work, and,
Yeah.
just making sure to greet her with a smile, and, and being intentional about
Mm-hmm.
conversations, and meeting needs that we see as well. And there are just a lot of opportunities for that. There's even opportunity for me in my job as a sports broadcaster, because how much am I able to keep it about positivity? How much am I
Mm-hmm.
able to um just kind of brag on these? I do a lot of college games, and
Yeah.
so I was going to say kids, brag on these kids,
Yeah.
and just their God-given abilities, quite frankly. And
Yeah.
maybe I don't say it exactly like that,
Right.
but I'm heaping praise, I'm lifting others up more than I am, you know, tearing down.
Right.
And it's become, through the last year or so, a lot more natural to do that. And it's like you
Mm.
don't even bat an eye.
Yeah.
Almost anything that we can do, whether it be social media, technology, IT, certainly healthcare, media, whatever we do, we can do it for the glory of God. We absolutely can. And 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 so we don't have to worry about, how do I bring God into my job? How do I do it?
Right.
Well, if you're just walking with God every day, then I mean, like, you're literally
Gonna,
carrying,
yeah, it's
the
gonna
Holy Spirit into
outpour from
your.
you. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's literally, you're literally carrying it into your workplace, and you
Yeah.
don't have to let the workplace or wherever you are impact you. No, you are impacting, God is impacting the space around you, because, you carry um that incredible connection with God, the Holy
Mm.
Spirit with you wherever you go. And wherever you go, it's love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And that's how you
Yeah.
walk. And so, like, and you can do that in your relationships with your
Yeah.
family, all day, every day. And I hope I don't make it sound too simplistic, because I know everybody's, that's having trouble at work is thinking like, but I don't know how to deal with this difficult coworker.
Yeah.
Um, Go first. You can just decide going into it that you're going to love them no matter what. You're
Yeah.
going to decide going into it that you're going to respond rather than react. You are going to make sure that whatever interaction you have with that person, that the fruits of the Spirit are coming out of you, and not the anger and the anxiety and stuff like
Right.
that. And truly, um just being mindful of that, just like truly being mindful of that life isn't happening to you, that these circumstances aren't happening to you. No, you are carrying hope into the world, and you are actively pushing out these fruits of the Spirit, that God's in control of that, and you're in control of that. you know you are empowered. You are not a victim.
Yeah.
And I know that can be tough to be aware of in the circumstance, but it's certainly how, um, what gives me peace as I walk into work on a daily basis.
Mm, I love it. That was a great way to kind of finish up with all of this, John. One question I always like to ask everyone at the end of my show is, what is one faith building practice that our listeners can go out into the world and do to help them grow their spiritual life?
Oh, I love this. The best way to grow your spiritual life is through community.
Mm,
It just is. And yeah, I mean, hey, prayer and yeah, absolutely pray. And
yeah.
Bible reading is wonderful. And actually, just going to a church service, that's great. Listening to praise and worship music, absolutely. Tithing or giving, however you feel led, that is absolutely a faith building exercise as well. But if you want to actually, grow exponentially, it's all about community. It's
Mm,
all about finding a group of people. And thankfully where we are right now in the world, we can do that in person again.
yeah.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
And but it's finding that community, that group of people that challenge you, and you decide that vulnerability is your superpower, and you let them see you.
Mm,
You let them see you for who you really are, and you find those people that aren't going to judge you. You
yeah.
find those people that are going to benefit from you sharing that you have this struggle, because maybe they have it too.
Yeah.
A group of like-minded people. Normally it's guys with guys and girls with girls, because we just tend to go through similar struggles. It just tends to work out a little bit better. So I do want to
Yep.
encourage that. Um, and just being honest. And I can't tell you how many times in our circle we've had people say, man, I'm struggling with this kind of addiction, and it could be substance, or what we're looking at, or you know
Yeah.
um, whatever. um, and just getting that out there in the air,
Mm-hmm.
getting that out there and into the light, that is what helps, you know take you to a different spot
Yeah.
with God. Um, because then that person can pray for you. They can hold you accountable. They can look at you without judgment and say, John, I have been there. I totally get it.
Yeah.
And you may not feel like you're worthy right now, but you're worthy. Here are some verses that say you are.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a remember. I know you know this, John, but remember,
Yeah.
Jesus died for this, and you don't have to be bound by this anymore. You can, um, you can give this over to God over and over again, no matter how many times it takes, and you can have victory and you can have freedom, even when it doesn't feel like you can. And I will walk with you on that. I'll text you about it and ask you about it. Maybe you're having trouble, not exploding at your kids, or, yelling, having arguments with your wife. Maybe your marriage is falling apart.
Yeah.
Do not suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Um, there is so much strength in a community of people that will lift you up, that will pray for you, that will, again, hold you accountable, and um, that will love you for who you are right now, not
Yeah.
for who you're pretending to be. And so there is life change in community. And I
Yeah.
know if I was going to say something about this Western culture right now, is we are becoming more isolated. That is
Yeah.
statistical.
Yeah.
That is, that is not me editorializing. That is
Right.
happening,
Yeah.
across all
Especially
generations.
after the past 3 years.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, isolation, it creates so many problems: addiction, mental health
Yeah.
problems, things like that.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody the other day, when I only have myself to talk with,
Right.
there's nobody to, if I get in a bad way, if I'm not in a good mental
Yeah.
space, there's nobody to counteract that and tell
Yeah.
me, and remind me of who I really am. So
Yeah.
community is the hack.
Yep.
It
I
is
love it.
absolutely the hack.
I
and
love it.
commit to it and make it a priority. Just kind of like circling back to what we were talking about earlier. Don't miss it for anything. Don't be like, oh, I've got to work, or oh, I'm too tired. No, don't miss it for anything. Get there. And I'm talking about a small group of people. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you go to church on Sunday. That is awesome. I've done that.
Someone who knows your name and knows your story. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's the hack, is community.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, John. Now, where can people find you, connect with you, listen to your podcast? Where we'll link to everything in the show notes, but tell them here as well.
I appreciate that. A lot of places to find me, but let's talk about the podcast. It's whereyou'regoing.org, whereyou'regoing.org. And you can find us on all the social media sites as well. But it's just a podcast about the fact that with God, where you're headed is so much better than where you've been, or even where you are right now. Where you're going and who you're becoming. There's a lot of hope for that. And so we talk to a lot of people that have been through the ringer. We've all been through stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it does not necessarily that our guests have it all together, but they are willing to say, no, here's where I haven't had it all together, and here's what you can learn from it. And so that is the heart behind the podcast, the hope behind the podcast. And I want people to have hope. And so whereyou'regoing.org is the website. And, we are everywhere podcasts are sold, YouTube and iTunes and Spotify.
All
Where
the
You're
good
Going
stuff.
is the podcast.
Thank you so much, John. Now, can I ask you a favor? Usually I close out this show by telling everyone, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next week. Can you do it, but in your announcer voice?
Okay, fantastic. I can do it. Yeah. All right. Are we ready to go?
Yeah. Let's send us out.
Fantastic. In 3, 2, 1. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast this week. We can't wait to have you back next week. Make sure you rate and review and subscribe to Paige's podcast 9 to 5. Can't wait to have you back with us next week for the latest edition. We'll see you next time.